It's me, it's TRG, the Ramblin' Gambler. This is Casino Combat Bootkamp. Yes, we spell combat and bootcamp with a K. Bootkamp is the gambling concepts from my Casino Combat podcast, explained in short, detailed segments. It's the podcast stripped of the stories and the jokes, just the gambling basics. Bootkamp can serve as a review for podcast listeners or as an introduction for those just learning about the podcast. In this segment, I'm going to discuss progressive wagering techniques. By the end of the segment, you should understand both the strengths and weaknesses of progressive wagering. Disclaimer: gambling in casinos can be a fun and profitable side hustle. I've documented that in my main podcast. It can also be a problem for some people. Do not use any of this with money you can't afford to lose. And if you need help, find help. One of the core concepts of Casino Combat is to learn a wagering strategy that includes both progressive and regressive components. Let's talk a minute about why this is important. In the previous segment, I discussed finding a game to play where the house advantage is as small as possible. The goal of Casino Combat is to win money over the course of a month of casino gambling. So playing a game where you have the best possible chance of winning is critically important. Baccarat and Blackjack, played correctly, are basically 50-50 games. Both of those games are almost like wagering on a coin flip, over and over and over and over. Across multiple trials, the results of a coin flip are going to be very close to 1/2 heads and 1/2 tails. If you bet $1 on heads for many coin flips, the best possible result you can hope for is to stop betting when you are ahead $1. Now, this is something that new gamblers figure out fairly quickly. And if they're going to accomplish more than finishing one hand ahead of the house, they realize they will need to change the amount wagered over the course of a gambling session. There are a variety of approaches to changing the amount wagered. Some people wait for a feeling to tell them to make a larger bet. Some people change their bet based on how much money they have available to them. Some make a larger bet when they lose, which is called regressive wagering. Others make a larger bet when they win, which is called progressive wagering. And progressive wagering is what we are discussing today. Increasing your bet after a win or a set of wins to finish a gambling session with a win of more than one bet. Progressive wagering in its most basic form works like this. You place a $10 bet, and if you win, the next bet is $20. And if you win that, the next bet is $30. And you continue to add $10 to your wager until you lose a bet. After a loss, you return to a $10 bet and continue betting $10 until you win a hand, and then you once again increase your bet to $20 and continue to increase your bet as long as you keep winning. It's simple, and it can work, but just progressive wagering has several problems. The first problem with a progressive wagering strategy occurs when you lose multiple hands in a row, and then win a hand or two, and then lose multiple hands in a row again. A progressive wagering system doesn't rebound from multiple losses unless a matching string of multiple wins occurs. Let's use an example to see why. A player bets $10 and loses, so they bet $10 again and lose. And this happens 2 more times, which isn't uncommon in a 50-50 game. The player has now lost $40. They win the next hand, and they've only lost $30. The next bet is $20, which they win. All right, only minus 10 now. So far, so good. And the next bet is $30, and they lose. So the player is back to minus 40. They lose the next hand and are down 50. In this example, the player needs to win the next 3 hands in a row to reach a profit of $10, which can and does happen. And obviously, I can arrange this in any way to create both a better or a worse outcome if I want. That's not the point. The point is to illustrate the problem that can occur. Progressive wagering works great with many groups of multiple wins, but offers no solution for many groups of multiple losses. And unfortunately, the only adjustment I can offer you to fix this problem is this. If you're going to wager progressively, I recommend that you decide how much you are willing to lose per table, and that you leave when you've lost that amount. The next problem with progressive wagering occurs when the 50-50 game that we've decided to play delivers 50-50 results. Your wagering looks like this. Your first bet's $10. You win. Your next bet's $20. You lose. Net result, you lost $10. Third bet, $10 win. Next bet, $20 loss. Net result, you lost $20. How long do you want to continue doing this? I did it for about 4 hours one time when I was learning to gamble, and I'd only read one book, and I'd only learned one wagering strategy, and it wasn't a whole lot of fun. The solution to this problem is to not start progressive wagering after only one win, and or to not increase your wager by the amount of your original bet. If you wait until you have won 2 hands before increasing your wager from 10 to 20, at least if you lose that bet, you're only back to even and you can start over. Better, in my opinion, is to wait until you have won 2 hands in a row and then increase your bet to 15, not to 20, and to keep adding $5 after each win, not 10. If you lose the $15 bet, at least you still have a $5 profit for the sequence, and you can start over with your $10 wager and that modest profit. The final problem with progressive wagering is unique to the game of blackjack. But blackjack is the game with the lowest house advantage, so we need to consider this issue as well. The rules of blackjack allow you to increase the amount of money you have wagered by doubling or splitting. Without going into all the details, a $10 wager can become a $20 wager by doubling or splitting, and hands that have been split can be doubled, so a $10 wager can become a wager of $50 or more. If done properly, all of this is in the player's favor, and with a properly sized bankroll, it isn't a problem. But suppose you started with a $10 wager and added $10 every time you won a hand. After winning 4 hands, your next bet is $50. And now, instead of splitting and doubling your way to a total of $50 wagered, the same exact splitting and doubling involves wagering $250. If you win, that's great. But if you lose, your bankroll is probably gone. And when your bankroll is gone, your gambling is over. And that is something every gambler needs to avoid. The solution to this is to not only limit the size of each increase, as I've already discussed, but also to limit the number of increases you make to a predetermined amount. I usually recommend not increasing it beyond 2.5 times your original wager. So a $25 wager max if you started with $10. In my personal play, I'll go that high and then back down to double the original wager for as long as the winning streak continues. Now that does limit the amount that you win during a really strong run of winning hands, but it prevents a loss that could force you to stop gambling. And that's progressive wagering. With the limits I've described, leaving the table after a predetermined number of losses, not increasing your bet until after you have won 2 hands, only increasing your bet by half of your original wager, and limiting the number of total increases during a long winning sequence, it's a very playable wagering system. But there are better approaches available, in my opinion. In the next segment of Casino Combat Bootcamp, I'll be teaching regressive wagering technique. And in the segment after that, I'll be combining progressive and regressive techniques into a unified wagering system. And it's a system that I used successfully for years. If this was useful and or interesting, I'd be thrilled if you decided to subscribe and join the squad as a casino combatant. If you'd like to learn more, continue listening to the Bootcamp playlist. Thanks, everyone.